today's guest is a famous singer and an author and a parent. And the reason why we are going to be talking today is because she seems to know a lot about something that our community cares about, and that is gaslighting. And what do we do to protect our children from being gaslit? So she's written a book called The Sky is Red. Let me make sure I can get her on. The Sky is Red for Children, and she's going to talk about it. She's on. Oh, there she is. Okay, Tyra, I see you. One second. Yes, let me let you. Grundman, who's a therapist and an author and a bunch of other things, from Canada, introduced us recently. And so that's how we met, and we clicked, and here she is. And thank you so much for joining us today, Tyra.
Oh, I'm so happy to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, I was just saying how Marnie had introduced us. So the title of your book is The Sky is Red. Before you even introduce yourself, we talked a little bit about the game, but how does that title connect with the top, what you talk about in your book, The Sky is Red?
Yeah, absolutely. Great question. So The Sky is Red, the fact that the sky is blue is such an easy concept for children to understand. This book was not supposed to be a book. This book was a simple conversation between me and my, at the time, I think 3 or 4-year-old daughter, where I was telling her, hey, I wanted to teach her how to trust herself, right? So how do you explain that concept? So I just kept telling her, hey, the sky is blue, right? And she said, yes. I said, okay. I said, wait a minute. Actually, I think the sky is red. And she said, no, mommy, the sky is blue. I said, but wait, the sky is red. I'm a grown up. I know what I see. Don't you know that I'm right? She's like, no, mommy, I see that the sky is blue. So it became a very simple concept and a very simple way to kind of express this to her. So we just kind of adapted that, and she loved hearing me be the crazy lady that thought that the sky was red. So at some point I sat down and I said, you know what, this is such a great way to express this concept to children. The Sky is Red is going to be a story I tell.
I love it. Okay, so first or next, now tell us who you are.
Yeah. So, hey guys, I'm Tyra Juliette Schwartz. I have been a performing artist for my whole life. So I've toured with Demi Lovato, Keith Urban, Kid Rock, Puddle of Mud. I lived a very different life. I feel like I'm talking about somebody else. And I've been fortunate enough to live my dream touring the world. And now I've since become a mother and an author. It ties together really interestingly because it all comes from kind of overcoming a lot of hardships that I had as a child, or a lack of confidence that I had as a child, to then instill that in me and see the trajectory of my life totally change just because of the way that I feel about myself and the truth that I was telling myself. So throughout all of these different career moves, I've always made it a point as well to encourage and inspire children and teach the importance of self-trust, trusting your instincts and self-confidence.
Yeah. And so we talked a bit about how underneath all of that is a child and anyone's ability to develop critical thinking skills. And so your book, you talked about the conversation with your daughter where you're the parent, you're the adult, you're the authority, and yet your daughter still was okay enough to disagree with you. But a lot of times kids are afraid to disagree with adults. And when an adult, especially a parent, says, this is how it is, they don't want to question. They don't develop those critical thinking skills. So talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. I mean, it's a really thin line, right? It's like you're taught to listen to parents and to authorities. And yes, that is so important. I am in no way saying that is not important. We definitely need to be able to protect our children with our knowledge. But it's also so important for children to be able to be discerning and to understand that, hey, like you might be right. You might be right and I might be wrong. I'll tell you a funny anecdote. I mean, my daughter never lets me live it down, that we were watching an award show and it was a quiz, and it was me, my mom, my brother, and we all explained to her why her answer was not correct and our answer was correct. And lo and behold, whose answer was correct but my daughter's. So, and she doesn't let me live that down. She never lets us live that down. Mommy, so anyway, so it's true. She, it doesn't matter. You can absolutely be right. And it's important that you understand that what you feel, what you think, and what you know matter, right? And developing that critical thinking and the confidence to think critically at a young age is how that follows you into into adulthood, right? You don't all of a sudden, you don't go through life being taught to not trust your own experiences, not trust your own opinions, not check in with yourself, and then all of a sudden, as a grown up, do it. Right?
Right.
It just doesn't flip like that. So it was really important to me to instill that in her. And I would say it's successful. I'm told I'm wrong quite often.
Yeah, yeah. And I think I mentioned to you, I used to be a high school English teacher, and one of the most important things for me to teach my students was also to develop critical thinking skills. And I think about now how our world is filled with all kinds of misinformation,
Mm,
and we don't know what's real anymore. So I think your book is so timely,
thank you.
especially in this day and age where kids and adults are getting all kinds of messages, and it's like, how do I even know what to believe and what's real?
Yeah, I think that you had mentioned when we spoke about AI too, and like just how scary that is. AI, social media. It's just, there could be something that in your heart is so wrong, but you're looking at it, but you have to. Critical thinking is so important. We'll just sum it up that way. It is just so, so, so important, and does become increasingly so.
Yeah. And I know you also had mentioned to me a story about that I want you to talk about how critical thinking relates to confidence. And you said something in your own life. I
Uh,
don't know if you remember it, but it was something
um,
a teacher told
yeah,
you.
yeah. So, yeah, that's great to bring up. So in school, I think I was in fourth grade, and my teacher, the person that looked up to, told me that I was going to grow up to be a waitress. No disrespect on waitress, and I was for a short time, and it was wonderful. But she meant it in a way that you were not going to grow up to make anything out of your life. That's what she meant.
Why would she
And
say such a thing to a
to a
child?
9-year-old.
Right.
I don't know. Maybe I wasn't listening as well at the time, or I was having a moment. But instead of her trying to support wherever I was in that moment, and trying to help me grow through it as a teacher should, she decided to tell me that I was never going to amount to anything. And as a 9-year-old, I could believe that, right? I could believe what the teacher is telling me if I
Mhm.
didn't have my own inner confidence or inner, critical thinking to be like, hey, you know what? No, that's not true. Or I'm not going to allow that to happen. Or how can somebody else define me like that? Right. I mean, my thinking wasn't as mature at the time, and it did affect me, but I did move past that. And to this day, can't believe how wrong that was, and what sort of adult would say something like that to a child.
Yeah, but I mean, as children, we a lot of us grow up being taught that we should respect our elders,
Yeah.
and I think with that comes with the idea that I can't question because that would be disrespectful. But you had said the line that not everything you hear is true. So even if it comes from an adult, how do you communicate this to children who I think our nature as children is just to be like, well, I'm just going to listen. I'm going to obey.
Yeah, that's a great question, and it's like I said, it's a very thin line, right? Because the last thing you want to do is make children not trust, authority figures as a whole, right? Or not trust their parents, or it's just, you don't want to do that. That is absolutely not the goal. But the goal is, I think that the best way to do it, and why The Sky is Red was born, is because teaching children that, hey, you don't have to throw everything that you've already learned, everything that you know, everything that feels right in the trash just because somebody now tells you to, right?
Mhm.
Your knowledge matters. You can think about something and you can ask questions, right? You could look in with yourself, and if instincts are important. If something feels wrong, it just might be wrong, right? It doesn't mean to be stubborn. It doesn't mean not to let other information in, but it does mean, you know what? You can also consider what you know, and you can ask questions. And it's something that is just so, so important for children. I think I told you about this too when I had posted on TikTok about this concept, and just tried to make a little ad for my book, and really directed it towards adults and parents of children. I don't think it reached any parents in the algorithm. All it reached children, from the ages of like 15 to 19, or young teens, that all said that a book like this would have changed their lives growing up because they were taught never to listen to themselves. A lot of them said that they were taught, if I say the sky is green, the sky is green, things like that. So it was interesting too to hear the same, the same concept brought up, but just it validated how important this is, the ability to trust your own thoughts and knowledge while still, learning. Is so important.
Yeah. So I'm a major note taker during conversations. And I
I
wrote
love
down a
it.
couple of things I want to make sure a couple of things you said. I think learning to question is not being disrespectful. And I think about how, our community is full of people who are in the midst of or in the aftermath of high conflict separations, divorce, custody battles, that whole kind of thing. And so gaslighting and triangulation, which we won't even get into yet, those are big issues. But I think that our clients themselves, our adult clients, often are afraid to question as well, and that we have a right to understand what's happening with our lives. I know I had interviewed a forensic accountant. She said that one of the issues she hears all the time of people saying, I don't understand, I'm being forced to make these huge decisions, and how it's okay to say, not even to question directly like why, but to just say, can you help me understand why you see
Yeah.
it that way? And to me, that's a very respectful, that's it's showing you're open-minded and you're willing to listen to what somebody else has to say because you want to learn where they're coming from.
100%. I actually think that when children question or speak back and feel comfortable enough to do that with adults or with authority, or it actually shows respect and trust, and it's actually a sign of closeness, right? Or just trust, to understand that the child feels that they can ask questions or can be open. So yes, 100%, and same applies to adults as well, definitely.
Yeah, and I also think that asking a question in that way models civility, which is something that's missing in
Yeah.
our society right now. There's a real lack of civility, not just in the courtroom, but in our greater world, where people
Yeah.
feel like if you don't agree with me, I don't even want to hear what you have to
Yeah.
say,
Yeah.
which is really, really unfortunate.
Yeah.
Um, the other thing that you said that really stood out to me was the line, instincts are important. Your instincts are important. And I feel like in my own life and in so many other people's lives, like we don't pay attention to our instincts because we're not ever taught that they matter, but our stomach often feels things first. It's almost like
Yeah.
before it hits your brain, your stomach knows when something feels wrong or when
Yeah.
something feels really good. So, but we kind of like dismiss that a lot and think, well, I should use my brain, even though maybe my brain's not there, but something in me is saying something's wrong. Don't you think it's important? Like, what do you think about teaching kids about, at a really early age, trusting their gut, or how are ways to do it besides like things like your book?
Oh gosh. Oh, it's just so important to do so. I mean, it's stranger danger, right? Trusting your gut, like knowing not to get too close to cars, knowing not to, you know, run into the middle of the street, or just everything that you need to learn. Trusting your gut and understanding what's safe and what's not is so important. Um, Other ways to do it. Sometimes I'll just outlandishly say something that's just totally untrue, just to get her to say, "Hey, mom, that's not right, and this is why." Right? Just giving her ability to practice standing up for herself in a safe way with a safe person, I think is very important. Not, I'm not just feeding her stuff all day long, but, just giving her opportunities to stand up for herself where that's safe. It's so important to trust your gut. I was thinking as you were saying that, I was just remembering, like, being a little bit older, teenager or young adult, dating people, or dating someone that all, my colleagues are like, they're such a great guy, they're such a great guy, right? And everyone thinks they're such a great
Mhm.
guy, and then I'm experiencing all these red flags, but everyone's telling me they're such a great guy, and
Mhm.
they're very highly respected in the community, and I'm like, I must be wrong, right?
Oh,
Maybe
so familiar. Right.
you know yeah, like maybe I didn't hear that right, or maybe, yeah, maybe I am just being untrusting. Maybe this is me and my daddy issues, so and that person was very validated. So it's so important. If I would have trusted myself a bit more at that time, Yeah, I would just said, hey, these are red flags. This is violating my boundaries. This is not what I'm comfortable with, and just move on instead of subjecting myself, feeling like, that I didn't have that. I didn't have the ability yet to trust my gut instinct. So,
Yeah, and when you just said it, of course, it made me think of one of the red flags for me when I meet someone, for a friend or whatever, is when they start telling me what a good person they are.
mm,
To me, that makes me so uncomfortable because it's like,
sales pitch.
why are you selling yourself to me? And
Yeah.
also being a teacher and a writing teacher, I'm always like, show me, don't tell me. I don't tell me about how great you are. So whenever I hear that from, it's like, if someone else says it, that's different. But when you meet me, don't tell me what a great person you are or how honest you are. It's just like,
Oh yeah.
why do you have to say that? And
I
the other thing that
agree.
stood out about what you just said was, with kind of playing these games with your daughter where you say something and you want her to question you. You're also teaching her how to advocate for
Yeah.
herself. Where it's like a muscle, like anything else. Like, you have to practice advocating. I know when I was little, I was really, really shy, and like I didn't even want to go, in a restaurant, to like ask the waiter to bring me like an extra napkin because I was so
Mm.
uncomfortable. So
Yeah.
I love that you do it, where it's like it's okay to stand up for yourself or to ask for something or
Yeah.
to disagree.
100%. It's so important. I mean, I'm also I'm in a shared custody situation, so I'm with her 50% of the time, right? But then even if I wasn't, she's at school, right? She's not always in my care. She's not always I'm not always going to be there to speak up for her. So I want her to have that muscle, as you said, developed to be able to say, hey, like this, these are my needs. These are my boundaries. This is what I can use right now. Right. I want her to be able to advocate for herself because that's a life-changing skill. It is a life-changing skill to be able to have the confidence to speak up for what you need, what you want, what you deserve. And everybody should have
Right.
this.
And it's also, as you say that about the shared custody, of course, a lot of people who are listening now and who will listen later are in the same situation. One of their biggest fears is, well, what happens when my kid goes over to the other parent's house, who often is abusive, and that's why we broke up? And like, I want to swoop in and save them. I want to keep them away from that other parent, but you
Mhm.
can't. And
No.
so we often have to talk about how one of the most important things you can do is teach your child to advocate for themselves. But also, the world is full of people like their difficult other parent, and they have to learn to deal with that. And it's really hard as the other parent, the parent on the other side that's like, oh, I'm throwing my kid into like the lion's pit. But they have to learn. And another thing they have to learn, which is really hard to swallow, is that not everyone is actually going to care how they feel.
Mm.
Not
Yeah.
everyone's going to respect their feelings, and they have to learn to navigate that as well.
Yeah, that's a great point. I touch on that with her all the time and just say, hey, you know what, you're in charge of your feelings, but you're not in charge of other people's feelings. It's not your job to convince anybody. I mean, it was a big part of me talking to her about The Sky Is Red when it was just being created in my mind. It was like, hey, Mr. Zippity is the character in the book, so I would say, Mr. Zippity still thinks that the sky is red after you said the sky is blue. Don't we need to convince him? I got her to the point where she would say, no, no, he could think whatever he wants. And I could think what I want. We could agree to disagree. Like, that's a really big one.
Yeah, love it.
I did want to, because you mentioned the shared parenting, I wanted to bring up something like you said that a lot of parents might feel like they're throwing their kids into the lion's den or the lion's pit. Like, how do you protect your kid from that?
Mhm.
So, so, so important to always remember that your child is half you and half the other parent. So you had mentioned maybe like saying something to warn them or something. It can't be done because when you're creating distrust or you're speaking down about the other parent, you're speaking down about half of your child, and they internalize that and they put blame on themselves, and it actually hurts their confidence. So I always say that the best defense, the kryptonite to gaslighting, the kryptonite even to parental alienation, the kryptonite to all of these things is self-trust. Pay attention to what you see and what is happening, not what you're being fed, not what somebody tells you. But you want to build up that muscle of self-trust, right? That if somebody has that self-trust, the ability to advocate for themselves, the ability to think for themselves, to not easily be swayed by somebody else force feeding them their opinion or their truth, and being able to hold on to their own, that will keep the child safe. That will keep the child safe, and that will also give the child the essential skills that they need to carry on in life as well.
Right, right. And we talked about that. And I love how your message is building up the child rather than breaking down the other parent.
Yeah. Yeah, you don't, breaking somebody down is negative energy. Building somebody up is positive energy. We need more positive energy in this world. And it's, you want your child, you want yourself to feel powerful. If our power or their power depends on pushing somebody else down, that's not real power, right? So we want to really be able to tell ourselves, hey, I trust myself, I'm powerful. And I really wanted to reward that in the story, right? I wanted to reward the fact that the person that's trusting themselves is powerful, instead of focusing the energy of the story on the fact that the person that is trying to do the gaslighting is doing something wrong. That to me, it shouldn't have been the focal
Right.
point.
Right, right. And that also comes back to agency, like what we can control and what we can't. Like you
Yeah.
talked about, can control what the other person who disagreed feels or thinks, but you can control what you believe and you can hold to that truth. And there was something else that you said when we first talked about, you could be the one lone person being right. How do you, I
Yes.
mean, that's hard. And especially for a child when you're surrounded by others who completely disagree. Can you talk about that in terms of gaslighting, and how do you help someone have that courage to be like, well, I still feel this way, even though nobody else does?
Yeah, it really, it all comes back to that, to exercising that muscle of self-trust and being okay with being the only person in the room that feels a certain way, and understanding that, like, there are mass groups of people that can make a wrong choice. I'll say this. It reminds me of a story when I was, I think I was in fifth grade. So I was really made fun of a lot when I was a child. I was really, really teased for things like being tall and wanting to be a singer, which became my career, and my dream came to come true, right? So, was I
Karma.
wrong? Yeah.
Oh, you love it.
Like, no, but like, was I wrong to be tall? Was I wrong to be a singer? Were they right to all of them think I was goofy for that? So like, yeah, like they all felt a certain way, and I stayed up along my course, although it was hard. I remember a specific moment of this girl, Sarah Tanner. Oh, I said the full name. Oh my gosh. Anyway, I really do remember it though. It was life changing for me. So thank you, Sarah, if you're listening to this. But I remember she said, there's a party for the cool kids this week, and everyone's invited except you. And it was so rude. And I went home and I just cried, and I felt like such an outcast just for doing and working on the things that I loved, right? I didn't stop. I remained goofy throughout the year in school. Anyway, let's fast forward to the Grammy Awards 2015, where I'm standing on stage with Ed Sheeran and Jeff Lynne's ELO, and I'm looking out in the audience holding the microphone, and I'm looking at Prince, I'm looking at Beyonce, I'm looking at Jay-Z, Paul McCartney watching me on stage, right? And I'm thinking to myself, this is a party for the cool kids, and I don't even think she could get in past the gate. you know? So I think it's like, I mean, just stories like that, or like, just you're not wrong because you're the minority thinking or doing something. You're actually a leader if you stick to that.
Yeah, love it. All right. So with that, let's end this. How can people find you and or your book?
Yes. This is The Sky is Red, and this is available on Amazon.com, Walmart.com, as well as BarnesandNoble.com. And my website is TyraJuliette.com. You'll see the spelling there. So, and yeah, feel free to reach out. Would love to keep in touch. And thanks for checking this out. I hope it helps you and your children have these important discussions.
Yes, and I have the link that you gave me. I think it's to Amazon. That's
Yeah,
in our little Instagram, and I'll put it there again.
thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Tyra. I don't know if there's anything that we missed, but this was fantastic, and I know some of our clients are also looking forward to seeing it. So whoever watches now or later, we really appreciate this.
Love that. Thank you so much for having me, and thank you for the important work you do. You're awesome.
Oh, thanks. All right, take care.
Take
Bye.
care.